Hi, this is Cisco from the Advent, and you're tuned into friendlyhouse.at. Peace.
So, hello, my name is Cecile. Welcome to the friendlyhouse.at blog. We're here with the first interviewee guest, which is The Advent. Hello and welcome.
Hello. Nice to be here.
You're playing tonight at the Boink in the Camera Club. You're going to present your live PA set. You want to tell us a little bit about your setup and how you work this live set?
Basically, it's two computers, two controllers, a couple of sound cards, and yeah, it's just basically playing with laptops now because it's easier, it's more mobile, it's easier to set up, it's easier to kind of dismantle and stuff. But it's just like a basic kind of setup, where you find most live acts these days they usually play with computers and stuff. So it just makes it easier, but it's kind of a basic setup, really.
Okay, and you say now as opposed to before, so you want to tell us a little bit about what your setup was like before and when you started this? Yeah. What was the situation then?
Well, before was a lot more equipment, a lot more kilos, and a longer sound checks, because before laptop technology became like really high tech and very advanced, and hard disks became bigger, and the quality and the programs and the software became much more available. Everything was done with machines and stuff. So I used to have like pretty big setup. I used to bring my own synthesizers, my own drum machines, my own mixer, all my cables, my effects. So it was a pretty that's how you played live in those days. You couldn't just have a computer and one little machine, because it just didn't exist. So you needed to take sort of like half of your studio to the stage. And I miss sometimes those times, because visually it looks nice. Do you get what I'm saying? When you're playing and you see like all the gear and all the drum machines, it's hard work to get it all right. And also you need the space. I think if I was to play with all my equipment in the camera club, I don't think the stage would be big enough. Do you get what I'm saying? But it's tight. Yeah, times has changed. So you kind of have to sort of change with the times. But in the early days, it was like longer sound checks, a lot more equipment, and usually like 2 or 3 people that used to travel with me to help me carry the cases and stuff. So yeah, a lot's changed.
Okay, thank you. What advice would you give to people who would like to start a live PA now that it's easier and that you don't have to carry equipment around? What would be a piece of advice for a beginner who wants to perform a live PA?
Well, if you're going to start sort of playing live, like, now in 2011, 2012, whatever, it's much more easier compared to the old days. So all the advice I could give to the younger generation of producers and artists is, find a program that you're comfortable with, get a really good controller that, that works fine for you and works well with you. And takes a lot of hard work, because you literally got to develop your sound. You don't want to do something that everybody is always doing, which I find is the problem these days, is that there's too many live acts that sound similar, there's no individuality. So try and find your sound, try and be unique, because the only way to stand out now as an artist and try and do something different is you need to stand out, you need to find some type of originality. But it's hard because everyone's using the same program, everyone's using the same plugins, the same samples, so it can be hard. But one thing's for sure, it's much easier. you know. So, you know, they're kind of spoilt for choice, the new generation. If I could take them back 15 years ago, it would be a lot more hard worker, because you need to learn how to use the equipment. You need to learn how to use the software. You need to know how MIDI works and all this. So there was a lot more thought into making music and playing live in the early days. Now it's just like you get a laptop, you just hit start. You get what I'm saying, man? But, you know, take time, learn your craft, and try and be original, you know?
You mentioned individuality. You as an artist have a very strong personality. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you developed this style and where it comes from?
Ooh, well, for me, I'm like an old veteran to the scene, because, you know, when I first started, you know, it was my generation that kind of started this music. You know, we kind of were like at the forefront of, you know, making the music, playing certain things for the first time, trying techniques for the first time. So, you know, in this aspect, you know, a lot has changed. But in the earlier days, it was much more fun. The scene was more raw. It wasn't like controlled and media driven like it is now. You know, now it's like, I mean, you know, it's like a globalization of dance music. Do you get what I'm saying? But before was very underground. You know, some parties that you'd go to in the early days, especially in England, like in the 80s, late 80s, like the beginning of rave. You know, there was no flyers. You know, you literally had to know where the party was, and you had to drive to a certain highway, and then they give you instructions how to get here and there. I mean, a lot's changed for sure. Do you get what I'm saying? But it's been good seeing how it's progressed and over the years. And I mean, the only thing I don't like about it now is that there's too much divided in the music. You know, there's too many scenes come from techno, and techno has always been like the bastard of the scene. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really get its well deserves. It's still considered sort of like, you know, in some places, you know, they don't push it like they used to push it. I mean, for me, the best time for techno and this type of music was like in the 90s. In the 90s was really, it was the pinnacle of this sound. And, you know, from that time, a lot of things happened off techno, from like electro to sort of like tech house to minimal to so many other different types of style, you know. So it's been a good journey. But in the beginning, you know, it was interesting to see, you know, the starting stages and how the music first developed. It was a very interesting time, you know. Now it's almost like normal for people to go to clubs and see the DJs and go to big festivals and see all the big techno lineups. But in the early days, it wasn't really like this. It was very, very underground, you know, and that's maybe what's missing, you know, underground. Long live the underground.
Yes, long live the underground. You mentioned the late 80s and 90s, which is when the acid house movement came along. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because before techno, because I'm coming from London, where, you know, because the scene originally came from America, as we all know, from places like Detroit, Chicago, New York, and blah, 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 blah. And the first place it came to in Europe was always UK, London. It was always had a big connection and stuff. And the first sort of scene that came out was sort of like Chicago house, sort of people like Steve Silk Hurley, Blaze, Frankie Knuckles, you know, sort of Marshall Jefferson and stuff. And then came acid house before techno, and acid house actually got a really bad time with the media because of the word acid. So all the kids that were going to parties and taking like ecstasy for the first time, the media, they didn't like that. So whenever there was like acid rave parties, the media basically didn't give it a chance. So, you know, acid house did not really last because the media just associated it with drugs, and then before you know it, the scene kind of died out. I mean, there was a lot of good records made at the time, but then when techno came in, it was more accepted because it wasn't associated with like acid and, you know, drugs and all this. But it was the same thing, you know, it was played in the same raves in the same venue. It's just that it had a different name. But acid house was very interesting, but, you know, like I said, man, it really had a bad time, you know, so it didn't really evolve like it did in Chicago, you know, because in Chicago it was where some of the best music was made, all the best artists, the record labels, they were all based in Chicago. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's just when it came to Europe, the media basically, they killed it. So it was a shame, you know.
Okay, thank you. Interesting insights. Um, can we have a few words about your wonderful label, Kombination Research, upcoming projects and some news?
Yeah.
What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, it's about sort of 16, 17 years old now. I mean, when I started it, it was just basically because I just came out of a record deal with London Records, which was like a big record company, and I didn't really like the way the major record companies were trying to control the artists, and you almost had to make music for the A&R man. You had to keep him happy, and I didn't like that towards the end. So when I stopped with London Records, I wanted to start a label that was just basically just to release my records. I never released nobody on Kombination Research up until about sort of like 6, 7 years ago. So before then was just all my releases, you know. So in the last 8 years, I've been sort of trying to release new artists and get other people on board on the label and stuff. So for the last 8 years, I've been trying to, you know, find and discover and work with young talent, you know, like the new generation, you know, people like Industrializer, and sort of people like Jason Fernandez, Hugo Paixão, a few other people, just sort of, you know, because now it's come to the point where, you know, I don't just need to always release stuff just by me, you know. I think it's good to give the young generation a chance. So this is what I'm using my label for now. It's sort of just trying to discover the new talent, and you know, it's working out really well. You know, there's a lot of new releases coming out. Of course, vinyl. You know, I'm still a believer in vinyl, even though it's a digital age and stuff. But I still know that I have a small vinyl buying public. It's not like a lot, but it's like 2, 3, 400 people, you know. And it's still good to kind of make records so they can keep the collection going and stuff. But you know, but yeah. So I mean, my aim now is just to release sort of vinyl and digital and try and find young artists and stuff. So it's been a good journey, you know, and there's still more releases to come and stuff. But it's still like, for me, it's still like an underground label. It's not like to be a mainstream label. It's just sort of, you know, it's just strictly for good, you know, intelligent techno, and always with, you know, the main forefront of it being techno, which is making music to make the people dance. That's why I made the label. That's why I made this music. You know, if you can't make the people dance, then what's the point in you making this music? Do you get what I'm saying? So it's always, even the name Kombination Research is researching the right combination to making the people dance. Do you get what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, you know, it's been fun. I've also been starting some new labels as well. Got another label called, well, I've actually got a few labels actually. I've got like about 5 labels, but the main ones are Kombination Research. Got a new one called Skyline Type Grooves. I also do code works with Industrializer as well. So yeah, I mean, you know, and plus, you know, people know me for techno, but I also do house. I also do sort of like electro as well. So I have like these sub labels for doing this type of music, you know, under different names, you know. So, you know, it's kind of interesting to kind of like spread the sound and different genres of styles with other labels and stuff. Yeah, so it's good.
Do you have any new projects for different live act or different DJ act, or what's coming next with the Advent?
What's coming next with the Advent? Okay, there's actually some few bits coming out now. There is remix wise. I'm actually working on the remix now for Tiga. I don't know if you know Tiga from Canada. I've known him for like a really long time and stuff. So he asked me to do a remix recently. So I'm working on that at the moment. I've done a remix for a new guy called Sasha Karasi for his Phobic label by Sandbox. I've got a couple of 12 inches EPs coming out on Hybrid, which is Kerry Leckerbusch's label from Sweden. There's actually a new single coming out on Monday called Higher Learning, so look out for that. And I'm also working on an album for Hybrid, which will be coming sort of middle 2012, which is going to be a mixture of like house, techno. It's going to be like an album, you know. It's not going to be just sort of banging techno on one style. I'm going to try and show different styles of music that I do, you know, and has been like about 6, 7 years since I've done my last album. So, you know, it's been a lot of years. So I've got new new ideas, some new concepts that I want to try out. So yeah, so look out for that. That'll be coming out next year as well.
Okay. And so to wrap it up, anything you want to say to your dear fans around the world?
Just, thanks for supporting me. Thanks for believing in techno. It is hard now because it's a lot of mainstream and music has become a lot commercial. So, you do get lost in the smoke of smoke screen of dance music and stuff. But, it's just want to say thanks to the fans that supported me over the years and, and keep supporting because, there's going to be a lot more good music coming out and stuff. So, tune in. Look on sort of Facebook, look on the social networks for where I'm going to be playing in your local town, your local city. Yeah, so, thank you. And yeah, it's been nice to get nice reaction from the crowd, which is quite nice. Thank you. Danke.
Okay, thank you. This was friendlyhouse.at blog with The Advent.